welcome to another episode of Boomer Has It. I'm JB Miller in London.
And I am your old friend Jim Jalamas here in Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
So today we're going to talk about culture, or rather a kind of culture, MAGA culture. So um, it just occurred to me recently that MAGA controls all three branches of government, but they want to control the culture too. And I mean, we want to discuss this, but first off, what exactly is MAGA culture? Jim, tell us what MAGA culture is, because even I'm a bit confused about this.
It's hard to pin down, but I think it would be fair to say it permeates almost every aspect of culture and society that we know, from TV to music to sports, gaming, books, comedy. So I think maybe the best approach would be to look at it one by one. How is it? What's the state of it in our society right now?
So first, why don't we start off with film? What's a MAGA film?
Well, I think the most famous and most successful of MAGA films, for a variety of reasons, and mainly because MAGA appears to be just consumed and obsessed with pedophilia, is a great pedo film called Sound of Freedom,
Pedo film.
which, well,
It's a
that's a nice
subgenre.
coinage.
It's a subgenre of pedo films brought to you by Make America Great Again. The Sound of Freedom was a pedo thriller, which came out how many years? Like 3 or 4 years ago, and was a fairly small, like $10 million budget, and made far over, was it over $200 million worldwide? It was a surprise hit, and certainly surprised a lot of traditional Hollywoodites who are usually perceived as being left of center. So that shook them a little bit to the core, but I don't think it's been repeated much since. But I guess you could certainly call that a MAGA film. The only other MAGA film I can think of recently was the Melania documentary, which was a kind of corrupt purchase by Jeff Bezos, or am I getting, or was it on
No,
Netflix?
you're absolutely right. He
Bezos.
financed the film to the tune of $40 million, and added a cherry on top. He put a $35 million cherry on top to promote it. And unlike Sound of Freedom, inversely correlated, you might say, it completely flopped.
Yeah.
Sound of Freedom was, to this day, the most successful independent film ever made if you measure it in constant dollars. The second would have been the movie Parasite.
Right. I mean, that's interesting because I'm surprised that it wasn't repeated. That the success of The Sound of Freedom didn't spawn, so to speak, a whole new, a number of sort of MAGA or pedophile thrillers, and it didn't, as far as I can see, unless I'm missing something. But I tend to follow the box office
You
returns.
do.
I
You're
don't
pretty good at that.
I'm interested in what people are reading, what people are watching, what people are going to see in the cinemas. I'm very supportive of people going to the cinema, which you do. You do more than I do. We need more theatrical support, otherwise all the movie theaters will close. But so
There's
that
also so that now we're talking. Okay, so that's movies, right? Can you think of any other pedo thrillers or MAGA thrillers, maybe along the lines of, a down and out rodeo athlete performer, or
well,
someone who
I
works at a
wonder,
gas station?
I wonder if those sort of revenge dramas, which go back to kind of the, so Dirty Harry in the '70s, but more recently wasn't, what's his name from Better Call Saul? He was in a couple of these, you know, don't mess with me. I may look like a pokey guy, but if you try to kidnap my daughter, I will find you and kill you.
Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson, yeah, Liam Neeson, and who was the guy in Better Call Saul? He was in. So I haven't prepared this yet.
Those Liam Neeson shows, I guess, I think that maybe crosses over. I mean, Liam Neeson isn't considered a MAGA hero, although he keeps misplacing his daughter. I mean, There's
Yeah,
been
yeah,
three in that series where
yes.
she's
But Bob Odenkirk, Bob Odenkirk made a couple of films which were like sort of take
Kirk, Odin Kirk.
Bob Odenkirk. Thank you. Yeah, I mean these are. I don't. It's not that I'm saying these are MAGA films, but is there some theme of getting back at the thugs who take our kids, um, or maybe I'm
And
not.
also, there's a theme of again, children being stolen. That seems to be a actually absolute preoccupation for MAGA.
Yeah,
But it's also an excuse for violence and taking the law into your own hands. A lot of these manosphere people have done that. They've set up men who are looking for some kind of gay encounter, and they'll find him and embarrass him and beat him up sometimes. At least according to the manosphere documentary that I saw. So
oh no,
it's a reason for righteous anger, because who can argue with it, really?
yeah, no, I think that's a good segue. I think that's a good observation that the manosphere. So it's an entry point of the manosphere into the sort of cinematic culture. I think
That's a
that's
nice way of putting it,
and I think
Mr.
that's
Mr.
uh,
Miller.
you put it. You brought it up. I think that's it. What about television? There's Yellowstone. Is that somehow? And I read that that's a MAGA. Um, MAGA people are enamored of Yellowstone. I've never seen it, but why? What thematically? What's attractive of Yellowstone to that side of the?
And I would say it's also a crossover too. It appeals to sort of both sides of it.
Yeah.
But there's this idea of anti-progress and cultural nostalgia, or it's the Dutton family, and also this theme we just touched on, might makes right, where they can use extrajudicial violence to break through, get it, stick it to the man who's oppressing them.
But this
Um,
isn't this isn't a new theme. I mean, if you go back to the '70s, you go back, you or the '50s, which was the high point, the high popularity of westerns. I don't know. I mean, there was a real conformist society in the '50s during the Eisenhower period. In the '60s, um, it was you got youth. um youth-related films like Easy Rider, which was it's an anti-establishment um, kind of film. But you got Clint Eastwood in the '70s with Dirty Harry. He did become a right-wing uh, sort of hero. I think Reagan even referenced some of those lines in his speeches. Make My Day, that was a Dirty Harry line. I think he dared the Democratic Congress to vote something, and he was going to veto it, make my day. So I think there has been maybe a tradition of this. How do you describe it? This loner who is against what he or she sees as the faltering culture and hits back at it, literally.
yeah, I think who is the great New York Times critic, film critic, who I have not seen much lately.
A.O. Scott.
A.O. Scott. For a while he ran a little series about, sort of a nostalgic series about films that made a mark on the culture, and he described Dirty Harry as kind of a renegade cop who was running a crusade against lily-livered politicians.
Yes, Lily Liver. Yeah, the sticking it to the man, man,
Sticking it to the
in hippie
man.
terms, sticking it to the man. No, I think that's right. Let's get on to
We
music.
should just one more item for TV, and we should mention
All right.
this because it might go over some of our listeners. This may pass them by, but um, Fox has created a series called David, King of Israel. It's a Fox TV series. It's a MAGA entertainment property for sure. It's attracted a huge Christian Zionist audience, and they describe it as a Fox faith vertical. And I just want to make a little point very quickly. We talked about the Melania film, and we're talking about this one. And there's a sharp contrast here, I think, maybe, to the Sound of Fury pedo thriller. And that's when marketing
Sound of
people talk,
Freedom.
talk
Sound of Freedom. You keep calling it Sound of Fury.
maybe because it makes me furious. There is there's a difference between organic growth and paid growth. And Matt, as you've pointed out, there's a lot of money sloshing around MAGA in various points of society, and they have the power to finance, they have the power to boycott, and they have the power to promote all over social media on the web. And
Yeah,
I think
there's a life support system. There's a whole infrastructure on the right that can support financially publishing and cinema and television. If that's
yeah,
your
so it's an interesting contrast. The Melania film, which had a lot of financing, and it was a pretty smart move, I'd say, for Bezos, because $75 million
it
is
bought him a lot.
it's play money for him, but
Yes.
it buys a whole lot when it comes
Yes.
to regulatory capture or consideration
No, that's the
and
sad thing
currying
about
favor. But the Sound of Freedom, that was a small budget by someone also sympathetic to MAGA,
that was
but it was a surprise hit. So
that was
there
the
might be a
definition of a viral hit. I mean, it went
it
viral
was a
without it.
viral hit. It
Yeah.
absolutely was. No question about it. So at some point in this conversation, what made that? Was it the time when that came that it arrived on the cultural scene that made it successful, or was it what was it, and what's passing us by now?
We forgot a film. We forgot Mel Gibson's Jesus film, which was in was it some other language? Uh,
That was decades ago.
was it? Was it that long ago?
Decades ago.
All right.
Decades
Well,
ago.
it seems like that's your. The Sound of Freedom reminded me of that film, but you're saying that was like 20 years ago. So there hasn't been much. I guess that would make the point for me. Haven't been that many blatantly MAGA
No,
ads. That was
good
before.
point. Yes,
All right.
to your point.
Okay, let's get on to music, because that's a juicy one. It's been in the news a little recently because the Freedom 250 celebrations, that concert fell apart when more than 2/3 of the artists that had been announced backed out of the event, not wanting to be associated with Trump because of his sinking popularity. Maybe this would have been different just 18 months ago or a
Do you
year.
have the list handy of performers? And it's interesting because most of them dropped out because they claimed they had no prior mention that it would be a political event. That said, many of them were battling negative comments, attacks from the general public
Yeah,
about attending.
here's the list.
Let's go slow. Let's go slow.
I mean, I didn't know a lot of these people.
Neither do I, but I know some of them.
Martina McBride, Young MC.
Now, Young MC was a seminal early rapper, and that's where we get the term "bust a move," which
Okay,
we use. Carol,
I use
we
that
use
all.
we use it regularly in our household,
Oh,
especially when you have a young child who's falling behind on getting to school. I,
all right.
I used to hear "bust a move," "let's go"
Oh, I didn't
frequently
know
in my
the
household.
derivation of that. CNC Music Factory from the early
Very, very
90s.
important band if you ever went out, because they're going to make you sweat.
Yes,
Uh,
they're going to make
so
you
it,
sweat. They're going to make you sweat in 1992.
well, that's a good point, but I mean, it's an anthem song for anyone who ever went out at
No,
night
sure, that's fair.
in the '90s. So
Yeah,
that's another observation here. We'll see that a lot of these acts are '90s
yeah,
acts,
yeah.
pretty stale.
Vanilla Ice, who's I think is going to be disappointed that the concert's been canceled because he was sticking through it to the end.
Yes, he
Millie
was.
Vanilli, who were exposed as lip syncing, not actually singing, but they were dancing. One of them died. There's one left. They were,
Was
I, mean,
it Millie or Vanilli?
I don't know. The Commodores, they were the first to back out.
God
Morris
bless them.
Morris Day and the Time. I remember him from the Prince film, right? Wasn't he in the blue Purple Rain? He, they, he,
Possibly.
they performed Purple Rain. They're out. Flo Rida, as in Florida, I guess. Flo Rida. I never heard of Flo Rida. Do you know who Flo Rida is?
No.
No. All right. And Brett Michaels. I don't know. I don't know who that is either. I would guess
I
another person from the '90s.
I think the majority of them dropped out, and
Yeah.
there were a couple of defiant hangers on. But that event called hosted by 250 Freedom, which is sort of a public-private enterprise. Um, what did you say? It blew up on the launch pad like Jeff
Yeah.
Bezos' latest rocket.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also instructive that these aren't household names. You know, if it was, if I mean, I'm venturing here, but I would venture to guess that if Obama was president during these big celebrations, that there'd be people with much bigger names want to get involved. Maybe like Bruce Springsteen, who's been very political, but also the left has. That's the point. The left has the bigger musical names. And even these are minor names, and they didn't want to get involved with anything associated with Trump. And to me, that's instructive about the culture, about MAGA culture, that I would venture to say that MAGA, beyond Kid Rock, whom they trot out all the time, that they think this is a great rocker that they have on the right. He's around a lot, and and country music maybe as a genre, not completely right wing, but I think there's a lot of conservative sentiment in the audience for country music. Going back to the Dixie Chicks, remember the Dixie Chicks got in trouble 20 years ago when they criticized George W. Bush and the war on Iraq, the Iraq War,
Right.
war, and they got in big trouble with their fan base because their fan base was more pro Bush, and they kind of they changed their name. They did from the Dixie Chicks to the Chicks, which I thought was interesting. But
And
anyway,
another interesting, when you bring up country music, there's a performer. She's a country star. Her name's Casey Musgraves, and she attracts a young audience, whether they like country music or not. And she's been defiant about standing up to MAGA sensibilities. In fact, she supported a mariachi family. Um, they they were detained by ICE during a
yeah,
routine check-in. She heard their story, and she invited them to be the opening act for her sold-out shows. Wait for it, in Texas at the
okay.
iconic Groon Hall.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've read articles recently that put pay to the conventional wisdom that all country music is, right wing music. It isn't. In fact, I've read somewhere
This
that it
isn't.
might be 50-50. And I think that's probably changed. I think that's probably changed from where it was, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I think there is a more
50-50.
yeah, I think, but you could say the same thing about Texas. I mean, Texas itself is much more politically divided. Certainly, the cities tend to be more progressive, and the outside the cities tend to be more right wing. We'll see what happens in November with that
I,
Texas.
I have to make one more comment too about the world of rappers.
Mm,
And this comment is about, we were talking about performers who are deploring MAGA influences, but sometimes audiences do. And this comes to me from a 22-year-old who likes a rapper named Kid Cudi. And Kid Cudi brought out a warm-up act, a woman by the name of Mia, spelled M-I-A. And before she came out, she made a ham-handed, tin-eared comment supporting ICE and illegal, deploring illegal immigrants. And then she went on to play her hit song, and the audience stood there dead-eyed and dumbfounded. And what ensued was a lawsuit after Kid Cudi fired her from the tour, and she's waging a countersuit, I'm sure. Uh, but sometimes, at some point, audiences eat this up. Maybe leading up to, the Guardian had cited 2023, the year before Trump's second ascendancy, as peak MAGA. And now, as you like to point out, they're in power and the cool factor's gone for a variety of reasons. We can get into that later. But I did want to point out the Kid Cudi hubbub.
Yeah. Right, but I mean, what was that? Was that a misreading of her fan base? If she had made those comments and not at a concert, in a podcast maybe or an interview, a lot of those people maybe wouldn't have been aware of it. And just like the song, when you connect politics directly to a song, if you make an announcement just before you play your most popular song, that can cause. Um, that can confuse matters, I think.
You might call that a performer's miscalculation.
Performance malpractice, maybe. But I think that's unfortunate in a way, because I'm always saying you should be able to separate the art from the artist, and I would be hypocritical to say you should not listen to a song because the performer was of different politics than you had.
A good point. That's a fair point.
Let's get on to sports, because there is a MAGA aspect to sports. There's going to be a big cage fight right on the south lawn of the White House. This is something that Trump likes personally, and they claimed it's a totally apolitical fight. I don't see how anything can be apolitical on the south lawn of the White House during this administration. I think that's a wish. But what's interesting, so I don't think sports particularly has a political contingent, but we both noticed that at the recent Super Bowl, the halftime show became politicized by the right. No one on the left was claiming any kind of politics for the show. Remember, it was Bad Bunny that a lot of people on the right were very upset about. I don't even understand why. He was proudly Puerto Rican, and there were people on the right implying or claiming that he was an immigrant. A clear misunderstanding of what the United States involves. Puerto Rico, of course, is a U.S. I'd call it a U.S. principality. It's not a state, but it's owned by the U.S.
It's a protectorate.
Protectorate.
That's the legal term.
So the right wing put on their competing show starring Kid Rock, and I think they were hoping that they would show all these millions of people who abandoned Bad Bunny's halftime show, and it was a fiasco. The Kid Rock show was a fiasco technically. They had all these technical glitches. Very few people watched it because it was very hard to find. It was on a rather obscure platform. And Bad Bunny's show, which I watched, as opposed to, I didn't watch the game, but I watched the show. It was fun. It was great. It was nothing to be upset about with that show. Didn't you think? It was very positive, uplifting. It was in Spanish. I didn't understand, but it looked fine to me. It was fun. It was my favorite.
You know what? I didn't find it less interesting because it was in another language. It was captivating. In fact, you might say that the language of good cinema made it really engaging. And the other epic fail here is, you're right. We're tracking different kinds of sports. MAGA hasn't had much of a foothold in the NBA, in Major League Baseball. And here's an attempt to go after the NFL in some respects, as TV becomes a third or fourth screen that people are viewing in the United States and elsewhere, with dwindling viewership. The Super Bowl and the NFL still dominate traditional TV. I think the second largest audience are the Oscars. So here was a huge opportunity to defy and gain attention from a massive audience, one of the biggest in the world of all ages. And so, excuse the pun, they dropped the ball on that one in a big way.
Well, I think you mess with I hate using these terms, leftist music, but I think you mess you if you mess with music politically on the right, you're gonna lose that fight. You're just gonna lose it unless you are predominantly a country music fan, perhaps, or a fealty to Kid Rock. You're not going to win that fight. But I don't know what that says anyway. And I don't know if Bruce Springsteen, who you'd think be kind of a red collar hero, if he's lost support because of his blatant political views, which go back decades. As I think I've said in the previous podcast, last time I saw Bruce Springsteen perform was at a 2004 rally for John Kerry, and so Springsteen's been always been very, very political. I think that sports is maybe politically resistant to politics. I would say
Interesting about Springsteen too, because he represents a demographic that's dominant in the MAGA world, and which is boomer culture, us.
Yes.
So he, for better or for worse, he probably created a huge division, cultural division in that demographic.
It might be also, I mean, you pointed out yourself, that might be a generational divide as well. I don't think my kids are that aware of Springsteen. He's very American, although he has an international following. I think the biggest Springsteen fan I know is a Swedish friend of mine who's traveled across countries in Europe to see Springsteen in concert. But he's our age. Does your daughter like Springsteen?
She does, only because I influence her a little bit. But I think one of the biggest boomer or Gen X Springsteen fans in the public arena would be Chris Christie, who boasted about having seen over 100 shows.
And Springsteen wanted kind of nothing to do with them. He never quite. I don't know if he ever posed for a picture with Chris Christie. Chris Christie, who seemed like a Republican oaf back when, now seems like a very level-headed Republican, because he was anti-Trump from pretty early on.
Well, maybe he and the boss patched it up for
let's hope
those
so.
reasons.
We have a note for gaming, because it's just such a huge thing, a huge part of the culture that I am completely oblivious to. I would have thought would have a right wing or MAGA. Are we conflating right wing with MAGA? I guess for the sake of this podcast, we are. Is there a big MAGA contingent to gaming? I mean, there's all these military games and shooting people. What's involved in gaming? I don't think either of us are in gaming families.
Yeah, I don't know if there's MAGA messaging in gaming culture. I mean, and I think it's informative to share with everyone out there who might not be aware that the gaming culture or games themselves have outranked Hollywood by a magnitude of many times, size-wise.
It's a huge business. So you can be oblivious about it or to it, but you are being oblivious to an enormous industry. And the gaming, for some reason, I associate gaming with drone making. Maybe I only bring that up because it was announced in the news today, and I don't like referring to news events because they get old very fast. But the Trump administration was calling on private drone makers to help make military drones because the government's used up so many, or they don't have enough. The military drones have been crucial in the Ukraine war with Russia, and also in the Iran war. So they're calling on private citizens building drones in their sheds to help out. Is that a MAGA thing? I don't know what that is.
Well, maybe you're equating the two, because to control a drone, basically it looks like you're you're playing on an Xbox, sort of the same physical reflexes
Yeah,
required
maybe that's why.
to do one and the other. But I don't I can't really answer the question if mega culture has somehow permeated gaming culture, but I would definitely say in reverse that the look and feel of certain types of games, particularly nostalgic games from the 90s, that look has influenced how ice and has recruited young men. It's kind of a look of these acid colored, um,
Hmm.
acid tone colors, um, and
Well,
and
also you remind me that the White
and
House. Can I just interject? Can I? Sorry, because I'm piggybacking on your comment. The White House and the Department of Defense, or whatever you want to call it, has put out posted videos. I think AI derived videos that look like video games of blowing shit up, that are pro-war, pro-Iran war. Is that a fair interjection? And when I rudely interrupted your thought, and I apologize.
you piggybacked on my comment, and
Yes, that's what.
now I have a lower back pain. Uh, no, well, yeah, I mean they're using the gaming aesthetic
There you go.
to
That's what I'm saying.
they use it in their graphics.
But I think it's interesting that the White House is kind of co-opting the visual look of gaming. I mean, that to me implies that there is a MAGA contingent to it. Let's get on to books, because the books are a puzzle. Literary. What is literary? I don't know if there's literary MAGA. We know there's they like books about conspiracy theories. Right? There's a lot of, and there are these imprints, like there was a Regnery that were published a lot of right wing mumbo
I think
jumbo.
Regnery was a imprint of Simon and Schuster, if I recall, or
Yeah, and
and I think the Crown Books has a whole line of right wing
makes sense. I mean,
publications.
they sell, but I think it has caused some, has ruffled some feathers in authors that are associated with those publishing houses, which is an occupational hazard, because there are very few publishing houses now. There are these conglomerates that have bought up all the smaller houses, and they have all these imprints. So you can be, part of HarperCollins or um,
By
Rand.
the way, I'm so wrong about Regnery. It's not an imprint of Simon and Schuster. It's an imprint of Skyhorse Publishing, which is a hardcore, fully integrated right wing publishing house.
So we know that MAGA people like these conspiracy um, nonfiction. I suppose they also like conspiracy thrillers, fiction. What are they reading? Everyone's reading romantasy now, and more women are reading books than men. So maybe MAGA women are reading. Is there a series of trad housewife novels? I bet there are. There must be. Um,
What would a MAGA romance novel look like? Would it be a guy like sort of you know sort of misunderstood, who's a Fox newscaster or pundit who becomes Secretary of Defense and then changes the name of the Defense Department to the Defense of War? Isn't he dreamy?
Well, you laugh. That's probably right. I mean, I would think so. I don't know. I didn't do my research for this aspect of MAGA culture for this podcast. I should have looked on the bestsellers, see what's selling now. It's just my point was just nonfiction is easier to identify politically than fiction is. But I'm sure there are trad romance novels. But also, there are probably a lot of MAGA women watching Heated Rivalry, who had read Heated Rivalry, which is about gay um, ice hockey players, um, and that's appealing to a lot of people. Is that political?
I think it's more. I
Yeah.
think it might be more appealing to women than to men or even gay men.
Yes, I
Uh,
think that's the readership. I think that's right. I think maybe on television as maybe a broader audience, but I think the initial appeal of the books was certainly amongst women. We say amongst women. Women are just reading more books than men anyway. I mean, almost by 2 to 1, I believe. That's
Yeah. Although I think when we talk about nonfiction in the literature realm of MAGA, I think it's any kind of book that is quote unquote researched that validates your point of view that immigrants are bad, that taxation is a way to destroy our freedom,
mm,
and anyone can publish them because they're Skyhorse is Renuary. They're looking for titles like that. So
yes,
if you're,
and it's
I
good.
think a friend of mine was lecturing me about a book, a MAGA friend of mine, and I looked at the author. I said, "Well, who is the author? What is the author's credentials?" And I wish I was, this will save this for another podcast, but I saw that the author was actually a part-time magician.
Why not? Why not? Although
Yeah,
there's
well, it's magical thinking, isn't it?
magical thinking. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's fair to say. Um, any other books you can think of? To me, it's just across the board. There are books for
We
everyone.
we have to do our work on that one,
Yeah. Or
Miller.
maybe
I
another
don't think we can
podcast.
do that off the cuff.
Yeah.
Although I think our observations are trenchant and insightful.
Well, wait for our trenchant observations on this final on another category, comedy, because we've discussed, you and I have discussed this a lot, and the idea we were talking about, um, the left wing versus right wing late night talk show hosts, and the late great Stephen Colbert, whom we all miss so much, and Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, um, he was the other guy. There are 5 of them.
Yeah,
Anyway,
what was his name? His last name began with a C. Colbert, something like that.
no. I'm talking about I mentioned Colbert. No. There's
Oh,
Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, and Zenith Caranti, I think is his name.
yeah, he's so funny.
Yeah. So they add up to millions per night. But the highest rated single show is Greg Gutfeld ! Gutfeld, who's on Fox News and has brought in an average of 3.1 million viewers live. That means when the show is broadcast, I think 4 nights a week on Fox News, and that's about twice what Stephen Colbert's numbers were, and that's impressive. But I would argue that the comics on the left are the viewership is diffused amongst 4 or 5 different shows, and so if you add up all those shows, it's more than double what Gutfeld Gutfeld takes in every night, and because you can't watch 2 shows at once, I think more people are watching these monologues on YouTube as I do. None of these shows are available to watch on television here in the UK. So I watch Stephen Colbert and I watch Jimmy Kimmel on YouTube the next morning, and I think that's how a lot of people, millions of people, watch those shows. But we both have watched Gutfeld and have some gut-related comments, observations to make. What was your take on Gutfeld?
Well, it's the age-old question about what makes something funny. Are you a court jester making fun of the king with permission and delight from your viewers, or are you siding with the king and making fun of the serfs and peasants? And I think Gutfeld's firmly in the serf and peasant category. He's punching down. His jokes are only funny to cruel people, I think.
Yes, I think that's a major point to make. I mean, I just don't find him. I don't find him funny. I think funny is funny, and but when I watched his most recent show, he had 2 jokes about the women on The View. He had 2 jokes. This is in one episode. two jokes about Chinese people eating dogs, and a joke about Bill Clinton being going to Hooters, which struck me as a 30-year-old. The joke is about 30 years old. He never makes jokes about Trump, and that's, to me, for a comedian, is like malpractice, really, because Trump is pretty funny in a horrible way. He's not funny. I don't find him funny, but the truth of him, the existence of him, I mean, is just so, there's so much hypocrisy. It's just it's hard to avoid. So yes.
I have a sample joke I can share from a recent monologue, and what was
from
current was
from Gutfeld.
from Gutfeld was the Guinness Book of World Records recently declared, or I identified the world's largest guacamole bowl, where he joked that the massive bowl was used to hide illegal immigrants. Now, who laughs at that? Like, I think our discussion about publishing, that's a joke that validates your belief that immigrants are bad people, and that they're a menace. At our peril do we allow people into this country, and it makes you feel good. But for everybody else, it's it's a cringy joke.
Yes, no, I would agree. That, to me, that would be punching down. But I have to say, Jimmy Kimmel's got into trouble for making a few jokes that I didn't find funny. One was in the middle of an admittedly very funny spoof of the Washington Correspondents' Dinner. This was, I think, 3 days before the actual dinner, which of course didn't take place because of the assassination attempt. But Jimmy Kimmel did this spoof where he was the host. You must have seen this, Jim. And he cut in reaction shots of from real, I think, State of the Union deliveries and other correspondent dinners. And but he made a joke showed Melania Trump, and she had the glow of an expectant widow. And I didn't find that funny. And when I saw that joke, and I saw that episode before the assassination attempt, I thought that this is going to get him into trouble. I didn't even anticipate an assassination attempt, but I just thought he later explained the joke as being because of their age difference. But that made it sound as if she was looking forward to her husband dying. And I didn't think that was funny. And I didn't think he deserved to get into trouble over it. But I wouldn't have written that joke, and I wouldn't have okayed that joke either.
Well, just coming off a comment only a few weeks prior where Trump declared how glad he was that Robert Mueller had died on Truth Social, or whatever you want to call it. It's part of this thing where MAGA, they're snowflakes, and that caused a huge reaction from loyalists to Trump. And so I will ask you, if there wasn't such a strong reaction, would you still have cringed at that joke?
Yeah, because I cringed at it before there was a reaction. I would cringe in real time. Yeah, no, I did. I cringed at that joke, and I don't think it's a justified joke. And I think justifying it because Trump said something terrible a couple of weeks earlier, it doesn't justify it, because that's getting down to his level. He says the most horrible things. So yeah, no, I thought that was I mean, it's one joke out of thousands, and Jimmy Kimmel is pretty consistent. Although I did think that after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, I thought he should have watched his word, been a bit more careful about his words. I remember he was pulled off the air for a week, and luckily that they had to relent and get him back on. He's got a great team of writers, but he sails a little close to the wind, and I've never felt Colbert did. I never felt Stephen Colbert said something that was unjustified or cruel. And I don't think Colbert would have made the, that Melania joke. I liked it. I think his writers were better than the Jimmy Kimmel writers. And we both talked about how we don't like how Jimmy Kimmel has this recurrent segment where he has people, interviews people on the street on Hollywood Boulevard, essentially show how stupid people are. I don't find that funny. I find that kind of offensive and low
So, well,
hanging fruit.
that's classic. It's punching down, as we spoke
Punching, that's
before.
punching down. But then,
And the other problem, I think the problem with Kimmel is, I mean, generally his monologues are very good. They're very sharp. But you just made a reference to how he had been pulled off the air for a week, and it was because he pontificated about the Charlie Kirk reaction. And sometimes comics fall into this trap of lecturing or expressing their preoccupation. Um, the
yeah,
famous comedian from the 50s, whose name escapes me at the moment, became obsessed with his obscenity trial and would read passages of
right.
his transcripts to audiences only to bore them to tears.
That's Lenny Bruce. That's a sad situation because the only film we have of his act was very late in his career when he was just rambling on about his court cases, and he wasn't funny. He wasn't funny.
No,
I have here what Jimmy Kimmel said, that the MAGA gang is desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it. You're quite right. That's pontificating. That's not funny. And we didn't know who the kid was. The kid, quote unquote, he was a kid. We didn't know what his politics were at that point. We're still kind of unclear what his politics. But anyway, let's get back to this idea of punching up and punching down, because it's been pointed out to us by our researcher that some people on the right think that because woke culture, and we can get into this term woke culture is this elitist, overpowering culture in universities and in the left of center culture. That because that is the mainstream or default culture. That if you attack wokeism, you are punching up, and maybe this is a fair argument. And I thought that was an interesting point. So if a comic like Dave Chappelle or Ricky Gervais makes a joke about a trans person, to me that seems like punching down, because trans people are not do not control the three levers of government like MAGA does. Uh, by definition, that has to be punching down. But if you are in the belief that woke culture is the dominant culture, and this is separating culture from politics, then you will think that is punching up. And I think that's an interesting point. It seems lost on me because I don't think wokeism, for want of a better term. In fact, let's get into this term wokeism. What does it mean? What was the original definition of woke, Jim? You're
it's a pretty old word, believe it or not. The first time I heard it was in 2017 when I was watching the director's commentary on the movie Get Out, and Jordan Peele they had debated the ending, whether the protagonist dies at the end or not. If you recall, this is a great horror film. It's a really terrifically dark comedy of
Oh yes, I remember that film. It's a good film.
sure. And he had said that what made them decide to make the main character survive was that the society was woke to the plight of black people in America. And I said to my
Meaning
wife, "What
awake.
did he say?" I said, "What did he say? Woke?" And she was entrenched in the culture wars at school. She was on our school board, and we had a massive conflict among families. And I won't go into the details, but it made the New York Times eventually. So she was entrenched, and she said she told me what the word woke meant. And it wasn't a new word in 2017. This is a word that black people shared with each other for a long time, not for popular use, but as you like to point out, co-opted by uh, by our dominant political power,
Very quickly. I
power
mean,
structure
that
very quickly.
it seemed like almost as soon as I'd heard the term woke, it got co-opted by the right wing and turned against them. The same way, and Trump has been very good at this. The term fake news, which he turned into a different, it turned that on its head almost immediately. But getting back to wokeism, so wokeism was really held against the left very quickly. Um, but for
Well,
want of a better term, I would agree that a lot of the universities were seized by a heightened political sensibility that shut down any dissent and forced a kind of curriculum on some of these universities. The same thing had happened in the late 60s. Um, and it became very politicized and out of control. And we both know stories about professors who got fired because they used the wrong term or they were perceived as not being as amenable to criticize colonialism or whatever it was. It did seem a bit Stalin-esque after a while. But that was the worst certainly of wokeism, and the with I U E I U with inclusion, EID, equality, inclusion, and what the hell is that?
you're making alphabet soup, Miller. Get with
I,
it.
yes,
DEI, diversity,
DEI.
equity,
Thank you.
inclusion.
How soon they forget?
How
DEI.
soon they
Yes,
forget.
DEI. DEI
At,
and
DEI and all, they also sunk another acronym, CSR, corporate social responsibility. They seem to be against a lot of acronyms, but the point being that we were talking a little earlier about how mega culture is obsessed with pedophilia. They're also obsessed with grievance. And to your point, Ricky Gervais, whenever he had his stand up attacking trans people, I think there was a time when a big part of America felt they couldn't say anything, like students or professors on a certain campus, that they felt oppressed by the woke culture. And they're the apotheosis, maybe. Again, I'm going to say 2023 was the year of peak MAGA, right before the election, during Biden, when we are looking at the defeat and the humiliation of Trump, the J6 catastrophe. There was a transgender TikTok influencer named Dylan Mulvaney who gained massive fame in a viral daily video that documented her gender transition. And Bud Light, Anheuser-Busch, sent Mulvaney a single customized beer, thinking that they could broaden their audience by reaching out to an influencer on TikTok. It was a complete disaster. It triggered an immediate, intense boycott of Bud Light
was
by conservative public figures and consumers.
oh my God, it was a marketing disaster, marketing malpractice. Although that looked like an accident waiting to happen to me, but that proved a point. Um, and that's a really interesting reference point. I don't personally, I don't see how you can not point 2024 as being peak MAGA with the reelection of Trump.
Well, only because they won. I think as soon as you win and you're in power, you're not. I guess you are peak MAGA, but the culture has the cultural practices of MAGA, which are built on a form of rebellion, which and we all know rebellion is a important ingredient of coolness. That changes everything, and I think unfortunately for them, they're using the same cultural practices, which are backfiring today.
Well, yeah, we can get into that. I have to say, it's an incredibly neat trick that MAGA made white people the aggrieved party in the United States of America. I didn't see that coming ever from um, Native Americans, people of color. LGBTQ people. No, it's the white straight white people are the aggrieved people. And that leads to the whole white replacement theory, whatever it's called, which I find insane, really insane. But I wonder if we've reached both peak MAGA and peak wokeism, maybe at the same time. And I don't know where that leaves us. I was thinking about.
I will tell you one thing, that there is one political rhetorical strategy that's like a wrecking ball, about that wrecks anti-woke complaint, and that is, begins with an A, and a certain mayor of my city uses it a lot. Can you guess what that might be?
What Mamdani using some, I don't know, what's the term?
Affordability.
There you go. Bingo. Affordability. Yes, that's the big question in these midterm elections. Are the economic issues going to, for want of a better word, trump the cultural issues? And I think that I think in 2024, I think it's dangerous to underestimate the impact that cultural issues had. Certainly the trans issue. Remember, there was that devastating ad. Therefore, she and them, and he's for you. Remember that saying?
Yeah, I do.
That was very pithy, and that was pretty instructive. And I think the Democrats really lost on that. But they also lost on the affordability issue. Inflation was high. It was Biden's economy. Now it's Trump's economy. Whatever Trump wants to say, they're still blaming Biden. And if we look at Texas, where Ken Paxton just won the Republican primary, so he is he's the Republican nominee, Republican challenger candidate for the Senate. He's running up against Tallarico, and he recently tried to tar and feather Tallarico as running a vegan campaign, and and I have to wonder if that's going to work or not. It may in Texas, but that's politicizing food, politicizing diet. That wasn't on our list of MAGA aspects of MAGA culture, but food is apparently one of them.
Well, you can certainly say veganism is woke, but you could also say, if you're only eating vegetables and avoiding meat, maybe you're doing it for budgetary purposes. But because I don't know if you've looked at the price of hamburger lately,
Yeah.
or God forbid, eggs.
Yes.
You could say it's an affordability issue right now.
All right. So you're the politicization of food right there. The beefsteak nation can't afford its beefsteak anymore. I just wonder. I mean, the Democrats would be really smart to avoid cultural issues and just zero in on affordability. I think that's the great issue. But I wonder. I mean, I guess we are going to see a culture war in November, because I don't know what else the Republicans have, frankly. They don't have the economic argument. They're in charge. I think they're going to try again that playbook that's worked so many times for them, the wedge issues, the cultural issues. And I just wonder if Americans are going to fall for that again. There were a lot of people who were former Democrats and independents who voted for Trump not last year, the year before last. I would have thought they have buyer's remorse, but we'll see. But would you? I said a few minutes ago that we'd pass peak woke and peak MAGA. Do you think that's right? Are we bad? That would imply we're right in the middle, and I don't know if we are or not. I think I'm in the left of middle.
I don't know if you look at it on a continuum. I don't know, but I do see MAGA using the same political rhetoric as they did 2, 3, 4 years ago, and I think in terms of gas prices reaching beyond $6 a gallon, that doesn't really carry much weight anymore.
You would think it wouldn't, and I mean, isn't the trans issue the new sort of the new gay issue. The gay issue went away for, I think, for Republicans, because it turns out there are a lot of gay Republicans, and everyone knows someone who's gay. I don't know if everyone knows someone who's trans, so maybe that's why it's a stronger issue. I'm putting it in very crude terms, but I think that politics is a blunt instrument. So, but don't you think?
I just don't know how the trans issue rises to inflection point in any coming election right now. They've been silenced and defeated. They're out there. J.K. Rowling herself will attest to that. But I just don't see how it can become a platform issue
Well,
in any kind of election coming up.
I don't either, but November's a few months away. I just don't know what else. Honestly don't know what else because they have to scare the public to vote for them again, right?
Well, you know what? We talked about this in a private phone call earlier. The trans issue did come up recently on the toxic dumpster fire known as X, where a hapless web facilitator from the DNC posted a promotion about James Tellerico. And here comes Stephen Miller on X, wearing his black cape, swooping in to make an ugly comment that they had they brought a trans candidate to the fore to an important election in Texas.
Did he implied or said that Tallarico was a trans candidate? Is that what he
trans
implied?
candidate based on a photograph? Because I don't know, Tallarico has kind of looks fey or feminine or something. And so I don't know. Do you want to? This is a family program. Do you want to say exactly what the response was from this hapless webmaster at the DNC?
You say it, and I'll try to beep out the right word.
Okay, her I mean, clearly these are people who work at the DNC. They're very committed to the cause and to the party, and you could just feel her exasperation when she responded, "Shut up, you ugly."
Beep.
Thank you. It begins with an F.
It's followed by U, then there's a C, and then it might be a K at the end. I'm not sure.
By the way, shout out to my friend Matt Weitz for bringing this to my attention. My immediate reaction was, "Oh, we're supposed to be going high. Why are we going low?" And it unnerved me. I kind of thought,
Really?
wow, this is
Oh,
this
the
is not.
vapors. The vapors. Oh,
I thought this wasn't good for
yeah.
Democrats.
No,
But of course, naturally, following the old Roy Cohn strategy to attack twice as hard. I mean, imagine if your wife or my wife came to our defense and doxed someone. Stephen Miller's wife doxed this webmaster.
no,
We don't call webmasters anymore. Revealed her as as an unhappy,
it's an
unmarried,
evil, dangerous thing. Evil, dangerous thing to do. But I just want to point out that Michelle Obama's famous dictum, "When they go low, we go high," has been discredited years ago in the last 3 elections. So I don't think you need to be worried.
By who? By Gavin Newsom, who's sort of playing the Trump game to the dismay of Democrats.
Yeah, by Gavin Newsom and a lot of others. I don't know how wise, or I don't know. I didn't even know what an X comment what it does now, except if you dox someone, that does have repercussions on that person.
Well, and I wonder if like using mustard gas at some point, both parties will say, let's not dox and let's not swat. And do you know what swatting is?
Yes, I do. You can explain it to the kids at home watching.
Well, one of our Supreme Court justices, police showed up at her house because someone made a call that there was someone with firearms or committing violence or murder. A whole SWAT team shows up.
And that is truly
investigate.
It's dangerous, and it's a costly and resources. It's a terrible thing to do.
Yeah, well, and I attended a conference last fall concerning the Freedom of Information Act and the First Amendment. And we had as a speaker the formerly very conservative judge, Michael Luttig. He had been not he, but his son and their family had been swatted too. So here we have we have lefties swatting righties and righties swatting lefties. It's dangerous. It's disruptive. It's costly. Maybe this is the mustard gas of our time. And it would be nice if doxing was too, because Stephen Miller's wife came out, doxed this web professional, accused her of being an unhappily unmarried female Democrat, possibly a cat lady. She responded with a picture of herself picking out her wedding dress. So there, Stephen Miller's wife.
Yeah, no, I'm much more concerned about doxing than that outraged comment by the DNC member using that naughty word. But I don't know if bad language gets you anywhere. That's going to be a long slog, an expensive campaign down in Texas, and we'll see what happens in November. But that's a good point, and that was well to bring that up. I don't know, but so did you answer my question about peak woke and peak? So I keep in my laptop. Peak woke and peak. I think we're past peak MAGA. I think we're probably past peak woke, but I don't know where that leaves us.
It leaves us at affordability, and I think Republicans playing defense at this point.
Yeah.
On their back feet, because for years they've been preaching wealth and status and power, and now as the powerless, as the people on budgets, people who are working class, as soon as they see that there's nothing coming their way, that's going to be pretty tough to defend.
That's a reason to vote against the Republicans. Is that enough of a reason to vote for the Democrats? Democrats have to get a message out that gets people out to vote. A lot of people might stay home in November, but I think the Democrats have got to get their act together.
Well, if you'll bear with me, I'm just going to do a quick analysis here. It's if we look back at the New York City mayoral campaign, and you might not say this is fair because it's New York City, it's a Democratic stronghold, but Mamdani came out from nowhere with a 1% chance from the Emerson poll in the primaries to take the whole thing away from one of the most powerful Democratic operatives in the country, which is Andrew Cuomo, who, like him or hate him, he gave us free pre-K in New York State. He was very friendly to the unions. He brought us gay marriage. He decriminalized a lot of the drug laws. That's dyed in the wool. That's a dyed in the wool Democrat and left of center Democrat. And the affordability question, it made him it was a very brilliant. Let me just finish quickly. I was a little afraid of Mamdani because I wanted someone like Cuomo in there to defend against the White House, the federalization of our local politics, which was happening far and wide, and still is. But it was a pretty brilliant move by the campaign to talk about affordability and the people who were struggling in New York City. It forced the campaign to the right. It forced Cuomo to the right. And the result was one of the biggest turnouts in New York City politics since the 1960s. Now, how did the Democrats replicate that in other jurisdictions, in Texas communities and Illinois or Northern California? How do you do that? That's not our job.
I think it takes a very skilled politician, and Mamdani certainly is that. I don't know if Tallarico is that either. He seems to have already made mistakes coming right out of the gate. But
like
put
your money where your mouth is, Miller.
The vegan thing. I'm running a vegan.
Oh, your mouth. The vegan thing.
Literally, my mouth. Why? That seems like an unforced error. Are you going to get all the vegan? How many vegan votes are there in Texas? It's
For the
good.
sake of our listeners and viewers, could you tell us what happened? What does veganism have to do with the Tallarico campaign, please?
He announced Tallarico, I believe, you can look this up and prove me wrong. Tallarico announced he was running a vegan campaign.
Aha.
Said that
In a cattle state.
in a, yes, in Texas. I think you could do that in Massachusetts, maybe, or I don't know what.
It's a head scratcher.
It's a head scratcher. That seems like we talk about political malpractice, and that seems like political malpractice. I don't think Mabdani would have said that. I'm running for New York mayor with an all-vegan campaign. Like, what does that mean? Why? Why should we? Why should we care what your diet is? But anyway,
Rice and lentils for everyone. Well, you know what? I'll leave that to our new fact checker. We have a research assistant. I
yes,
want to name him. His name is Nathaniel Rowe. He's done some great work for us,
yes,
and it helps us be more precise in what we share with all
yes.
of you.
Nathaniel, look that up. Look that up. I may be wrong, but I'd be curious. So that's something to look out for in our next episode. This comes to headquakes. Jim, do you have a headquake for us this week?
I do have a headquake, and it's I attended a protest in Newark yesterday. It was at Delaney Hall, where there's a detention center run by a private organization called GEO, and it's been a location of a really unprecedented violence until yesterday or day before. The mayor of Newark, Ras Baraka, imposed a curfew on the area. The day before that, the governor had negotiated with the federal government, with the Department of Homeland Security, to remove ICE and leave law enforcement to the state police, the sheriff's department, and the Newark police, hopefully diffusing some of the violence, because what we know is ICE doesn't play by the rules of law enforcement, and neither are they trained in law enforcement. So we had bloody, violent pepper gas, pepper spray, pepper pellet activity all during the week. I showed up around in the afternoon. There were around 70 people, and based on my review on social media and the news, there was incredible violence last night. The point being, why be an activist? And there were a lot of these loosely organized groups protesting, but also helping families of detainees navigate a pretty Byzantine visitation system. I spoke to one of them who said that the rules were designed to stall them, making them go from one side of the corridor, the cordoned area, which is half a mile away from the other one, forcing them to go back and forth. And these activists got them through. And while we were out there, and I was trying to decide whether I was a citizen journalist or a protester, we saw a woman get through in her car. The police waved her through because she got permission. And as she waited, we saw her stifle tears holding the steering wheel. And I think that made my whole day worthwhile. So when people ask me why I'm an activist, that's why.
That's very moving, and I'm glad you went out there. Thanks for that, and I'm glad you went and reported on that. I have just a very short headquake. Nothing as highfalutin as that, or as socially conscious as that. I've been reading this book, Henry Chips Channon, the first volume of his 3 volumes of diary. He died about 60 years ago.
I beg your pardon. That's one volume?
That's the first volume. There are 3 of these. And
it looks like a masonry brick.
Well, that's what a diary is. You write every night. If you live long enough, you're going to have a lot of entries. He was an American born in 1898, He's from Chicago. He moved to England in the 20s, went to Oxford, and became an English person. He gave up his, I think he gave, maybe he kept his U.S. nationality, but he got British nationality, became a member of Parliament to very little effect. He was, he was, I think, in Parliament just for the social aspect for the parties. Married into the Guinness family, the very wealthy Guinness family, who were connected to the aristocracy, and so lived very well. He was bisexual. He knew everyone from the Duke of Windsor to King George VI to Noel Coward to Richard Rogers and all the Churchill, all of them, everyone who was anyone. But he was very indiscreet in his diary. So these were finally published in the last few years. He didn't want them published till at least 50 years after he died, to make sure everyone he mentioned in the diary said were long dead as well. And it's a real eye opener, and it's a real kind of street level view of high society, high snobbish society, because he was a quite pro-German, really anti-Churchill, pro-royalist who he called the royalties. He called all the royals the royalties. He was the ultimate snob, a very unpleasant person, but a fantastic actor. It was a great combination. So that's my headquake. Chips.
You know what? I think to keep up with you next time, I'm gonna wear like a starched collar and a pince nez.
Yes, that's the least you can do, Jim. And maybe
or a monocle.
A monocle, maybe a pipe or a cigar. I don't know how Carol will. You don't have to light the cigar, but it might be a good look. All right, well, that's what we have for this week on Boomer Has It. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm JB Miller in London.
I'm Jim Jalamas in Brooklyn.
See you next time.